This is part two of Does the Bible Support the Pro-Abortion Position? In yesterday's show, I dealt briefly with Exodus chapter 21, verses 22 through 25, a passage which very clearly shows that a woman who is caught in a struggle between two men and delivers her children prematurely, that particular passage indicates very clearly that a preborn baby is indeed a child. And I'm going to give you a couple of other support mechanisms for this. Meredith G. Klein offers a helpful summary of the passage, and he says this law found in Exodus 21, 22 through 25 turns out to be perhaps the most decisive positive evidence in Scripture that the fetus is to be regarded as a living person. And another commentator on this, Umberto Cassuto, also known as Moses David Cassuto, he was a Jewish rabbi from Florence, Italy. He wrote a commentary on Exodus. So here, this is a Hebrew scholar, a rabbi of some repute, and his exposition of this particular passage, what he does is he brings out the nuances of the Hebrew with this, and this is what he writes about the passage. When men strive together and they hurt unintentionally a woman with child, and her children come forth, but no mischief happens, that is, the woman and the children do not die, the one who hurts her shall surely be punished by a fine. But if any mischief happens, that is, if the woman dies or the children, then you shall give life for life. And the reason that this is so striking is because, again, the Hebrew word there for what is in this woman's womb is in fact yeled, and the Hebrew word yeled is used elsewhere in Scripture for a born child. Now, there are other words in Scripture for miscarriage, and so if the text of Scripture wanted to indicate that this was simply a miscarriage, and a miscarriage would not be the result of any intentionality, it would simply be a premature birth that personhood might not have been ascribed, although even in a miscarriage, personhood is ascribed. And there are two Hebrew words in Scripture which deal with this in terms of a miscarriage, but in this particular case it's very clear, so that her children come out. And it's unfortunate that Bible translations don't pick up on this and translate it this way. I had translated this one from the New American Standard Bible. Uses the phrase, she has a miscarriage, yet in the margin it says literally, her children come out. And again, I don't understand why, when something is literally in the text, this is what the text literally says, it ought to be given literally in the actual translation. And then if you want to put something in the margin about what this means, that's something else. But in this particular case, it was very important to point out that so that her children come out, in order to make the indication here that we're dealing with personhood. One final thing related to this, the King James Version takes a different translation approach, but it is consistent with the argument that children are coming out. In the altercation with the fighting men and pregnant woman, the King James reads, if men strive and hurt a woman with child, so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, he shall surely be punished according as the woman's husband will lay upon him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. And so the King James Version uses the phrase fruit. And the use of the word fruit is a descriptive euphemism for a born child in the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 30, verse 2, and the New Testament, Luke chapter 1, verse 42. So no matter which way you look at this, you look at the literal text, we're seeing here that her children come out, and because these are children who come out, and because the Hebrew word yeled is used elsewhere in Scripture for a born child, the harm would be attributed both to the mother and to the child. You have to remember in Israel, and this is something that isn't often addressed, there doesn't need to be a verse in the Bible that says abortion is wrong. Since personhood is attributed to a preborn child all the way through the gestation period, the personhood is attributed and therefore is under the protection of the law. Also, for a Jew to abort a preborn child is the heightened aspect of a curse on anybody. I mean, Hannah was depressed because she was without child. Sarah, again, without child. This was a big deal in Israel, and so to think about even having a prohibition on abortion would be unthinkable, and then to go beyond that, to maintain that it would to have a law that says, oh, it's okay, or to dismiss a preborn child would be unthinkable in Israel as well. Very much like in the same category of homosexuality. There doesn't need to be a direct prohibition against homosexual marriage in the Bible. The fact that God had maintained in Genesis, it's one man and one woman, and Jesus reiterates this in Matthew chapter 19, one man, one woman. There doesn't need to be a verse that says, oh, by the way, it's wrong for two men to get married. Oh, by the way, it's wrong for two women to get married. The paradigm has been established. The paradigm sets the pattern elsewhere through Scripture. You don't need a further prohibition. Someone like homosexuals will say, or pro-abortionists will say, there's nothing in the New Testament that prohibits abortion. There's nothing in the New Testament that prohibits homosexual marriage. There doesn't need to be a prohibition against that. The idea of the paradigm being set in terms of what a proper marriage is and what a person is in Scripture identifies what the law ought to be on these types of things. And so Fred the atheist, who continues to ignore the facts, who continues to involve himself in debates on topics of which he is ignorant of, needs to go back and study the Hebrew on this particular passage and see what it is. He needs to quit dodging the specifics of the passage and quit creating red herrings by going to a passage like in Numbers chapter 5 on the jealousy ordeal that isn't comparable in any sense to what is taking place in Exodus chapter 21. The passage in Numbers chapter 5, this woman is not undergoing a miscarriage at all. It's dealing with barrenness of the womb in the future. The particular passage does not deal with a judicial matter. You're not having a civil magistrate like you do in Exodus chapter 21 making a determination. God makes the determination in Numbers chapter 5. And so there is no contradiction in the Bible between Exodus 21 and Numbers chapter 5 and the jealousy ordeal. So this is a lesson here for Christians as you go about your work answering objections. You have to keep two things in mind. Do your homework and in dealing with objections. Make sure you have all the facts straight. And number two, don't expect just because you lay all the facts before somebody that all of a sudden they're going to embrace it. I've been dealing with Fred Weiss for nearly 2 years through the distribution of 500 emails to me, and I have laid out my case in numerous examples over and over and over and over again. And I would say in 99.9% of the cases, it's water off a duck's back. He isn't interested. He is blinded by his own rage. He is blinded by his hatred of what God has to say in the Bible. In one sense, I feel sorry for the man. What he needs is the gospel of Jesus Christ. It is something that he is rejecting over and over and over again. He thinks he has a handle on everything that he says. He always ends with case closed. Well, Fred, I have to say to you, on this particular case, like on the other cases I've dealt with you, case closed.
American Vision is proud to present this year's Worldview Super Conference, July 21st through 24th at North Metro Church, Marietta, Georgia. For more information, visit conference.americanvision.org. That's conference.americanvision.org. worldview.org.